Welcome to the very first episode of The Sinister Crime. Grab a snack, preferably not curry, and get cozy, because today we're diving into a case that's as wild as it is chilling. Today's story is all about obsession, revenge, and yes, chicken curry. Let's get into it. It's the 27th of January 2009. A newly engaged couple, Lakhvinder Cheema and Gurjit Choongh, were absolutely worn out. They'd been running around with all the wedding preparations because they were just 18 days away from tying the knot on Valentine's Day. They were back at their cozy home in West London, absolutely starving, but cooking? Nope, not happening. They had zero energy left for that, but lucky for them, no pun intended, there was a batch of homemade chicken curry sitting in the fridge. Perfect, right? They set the table, grabbed their cutlery, reheated the curry, and got ready to dig in. Sounds like a nice little evening, doesn't it? Lucky suddenly started to feel this strange sensation creeping through his body. At first it was subtle, but then it grew stronger and more intense. His face began to go numb, making it impossible for him to speak or even show the pain he was starting to feel. In a panic, the spoon slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. It felt like something inside him was slowly shutting down his nervous system. Realizing that something was seriously wrong, he desperately urged Gurjit to phone his sister, who lived in London as well. By the time Gurjit picked up the phone, she was starting to feel exactly what Lucky had described, though not nearly as bad. But still, it was enough to freak her out. Now in full-on panic mode, she knew she had to step up and make sure they both made it out of this. So she first called Lucky's sister, and then without missing a beat, she dialed 999. During the call to the police, Lucky said something chilling. He told them he and Gurjit had been poisoned, and to make it even more terrifying, he claimed to know exactly who had done it. As he tried to give the police as much information as he could, the situation was only getting worse. Gurjit, too, was slowly succumbing to the illness.
Okay, is your girlfriend conscious?
Yeah,
Is she awake?
yeah, same like me. But we are very worried because...
Okay, so what makes you think somebody poisoned your food?
Right before the ambulance could even get there, Lucky's sister pulls up in her car with her two sons. They rush in, grab Lucky off the floor, and carry him out to the car, then do the same for Gurjit. They fight their way through London traffic and speed to the nearest hospital. When they finally get there, Lucky and Gurjit are both violently throwing up and sweating like crazy. Lucky's skin is looking almost ghostly pale, and he's struggling to move. Once they get Lucky into the ICU, things take a turn for the worse. He starts developing this unusual cardiac arrhythmia, meaning that Lucky's heart was beating abnormally, either too fast, too slow, or irregularly, which may disrupt normal blood flow. Now his vision is slowly fading too. The doctors, seeing all these signs, immediately know they've been poisoned, but they have no idea what kind of poison it is. They're stumped. Things go downhill fast. Lucky goes into multiple organ failure and begins suffocating, completely unaware of what's happening to him. The doctors, helpless, can do nothing to save him. And right there, in front of everyone, Lucky slowly drifts into unconsciousness, and tragically he passes away. While all of this was happening, Gurjit's condition was getting worse too. The doctors acted fast and put her into a medically induced coma to try and save her life. They pumped her full of antidotes and somehow, just barely, managed to pull her through. But when she finally woke up, weeks had passed since her last memory. Everything had completely changed. Her wedding day? It had come and gone with no celebration, no happiness, just sorrow. Valentine's Day, which was supposed to be the most romantic day of her life, was now filled with grief. When she found out that Lucky had passed away, her heart completely shattered. The doctors then gave her the pathology report, and that's when things got even weirder. They said they had no idea what had caused Lucky's death. So, the police brought in a renowned forensic toxicologist to get to the bottom of this and needed Gurjit's help to understand what had really happened to her and Lucky. But Gurjit, all she could think about was how her whole life had been ripped away from her. She thought about everything she had lost, the life she could have had, and there was only one person who could have taken that all away from her. The same person whose name she had already given to the police. Lakhvir Singh. Let's rewind and go back to 1993 in Southall, London. This is where Lakhvir Kaur Singh, a devoted mother of 3, lived. Not only was she taking care of her 3 kids, but she was also looking after her husband, who was battling cancer. She was well known and always looked like she had everything together. But oh, beneath that perfect exterior, a whole lot of drama was brewing. Lakhvir, who had met Lucky through mutual connections, was kind enough to open her home to him. Lucky had just gone through a divorce and was left homeless, so she offered him a place to stay with her and her family while he got back on his feet, saving money and looking for a place of his own. And so Lucky moved in. But when he did, Lucky began to notice the cracks in Lakhvir's seemingly perfect life. She was married to a much older man, a man she felt no real love for, someone she never truly connected with or saw as a real partner in her life. Eventually, after a few months of saving money and getting back on his feet, Lucky moved out of the Singh's home and into his own apartment. And the only other person with a spare key? Lakhvir. Things took a turn no one saw coming. For 16 years, yes, you heard that right, 16 years, somewhere along the way, Lakhvir and Lucky started having an affair. At first, it was crystal clear this was supposed to be casual, no strings attached. And they both had their reasons for that. For Lucky, he had just come out of a divorce, and diving into a serious relationship was the last thing he wanted. And let's not forget, Lakhvir was much older than him. She had a husband, kids, a home, an entire life, while he was still trying to figure his own. For Lakhvir, this was just something on the side. She had 3 kids, and she wasn't going to leave her husband, ruin her reputation, or shame her family to be with a younger man. And even though she didn't love her husband romantically, she did care for him. He was battling cancer, and she felt a responsibility to be there for him. But here's the thing, those very reasons they thought they shouldn't get serious, those were the same reasons they couldn't stay away from each other. Lucky's youth and energy brought an excitement Lakhvir had been craving. On the flip side, Lakhvir's age and distant life gave Lucky exactly the emotional detachment he was looking for. And so the two carried on their affair, believing they had it all under control. Things seemed perfect. Lakhvir's husband never found out, and Lucky carried on guilt-free. The affair that started when Lucky was just 23, which carried on till 39 while Lakhvir moved from her 30s into her mid-40s. What was supposed to be casual had evolved into something far deeper. Over 16 years, the two went through everything together, including Lakhvir getting pregnant multiple times. Each time, Lucky insisted she terminate the pregnancy, and each time she did exactly that. Now here's the twist. It's now 2008, and Lucky has reached his limit. He decided he didn't want to be with Lakhvir anymore. He was done with the sneaking around. Maybe he longed for something real, a partner he could truly commit to, someone he could live with openly, have a proper wedding with, and start an actual family with. A life that didn't require hiding. This is when Gurjit entered the picture. Lucky had first met her when she was just 19, but at the time the idea of pursuing anything serious didn't feel quite right. Fast forward to 2008, Gurjit was now 21, and suddenly Lucky saw things differently. She was back on his mind. When the idea of marriage was discussed, Gurjit and her family gave their blessings. When Lucky told Lakhvir about his engagement, she was devastated. And by devastated, I mean absolutely furious. This wasn't heartbreak. This was something darker. Lakhvir was desperate. She begged Lucky to reconsider, even going so far as to suggest they could keep the affair going after his marriage. Lucky's decision was final, and she could see it. She had been replaced by someone younger, and it stung. It was like a cruel twist of fate, almost like karma for how she had replaced her own husband all those years ago with a younger man. As Lucky turned his back and walked away, Lakhvir was standing there completely shattered. But Lakhvir wasn't just going to sit around crying into a box of tissues. Oh no, she had a plan. And this plan? It's one for the books. At first, Lakhvir started stalking them, watching from the shadows. She'd wait outside their home and peek through their windows while they were inside. One evening, it all boiled over. As she stood outside their window, she saw Lucky and Gurjit getting into bed together. Something about that sight completely sent Lakhvir into a frenzy. She couldn't handle it. Fueled by anger, she stormed over to their house, used the spare key she still had, and barged right in. She yelled at both of them, warning Lucky that if she ever caught him in bed with his fiancée again, she would burn their house down. Strangely enough, Lucky didn't seem to take the invasion of privacy too seriously. Neither he nor Gurjit reported it to the police, and they didn't bother changing the locks on the house. It was like they just brushed it off, not realizing the depths of what they were dealing with. Soon after that shocking incident, Lucky and Gurjit made it official. They announced their wedding and set the date for Valentine's Day 2009. When Lakhvir heard the news, it hit her hard. That was the moment she made up her mind. She was going to India for a few weeks to get away from it all. Fast forward to January 27, 2009. Lucky and Gurjit were days away from their wedding, and like any couple about to tie the knot, they were busy with wedding prep. That's when Lakhvir, who's now back in London, made her move. And her weapon? Poison. Not just any poison, though. She chose aconite. If you're like me and you're thinking, what even is aconite? Let me explain. Aconite is a highly toxic plant, also known as monkshood, or devil's helmet. It's deadly and has been used for centuries in various parts of the world to poison enemies. Think of it as nature's cyanide. And here's the thing. Lakhvir didn't just stumble upon this plant. She actually smuggled it into the UK from India. Lakhvir's plan to poison Lucky and his fiancée Gurjit was shockingly straightforward because she still had a key to Lucky's house. She casually let herself into their home like it was no big deal, walked over to their fridge and found a container of chicken curry. She took out her packet of aconite and just sprinkled it into their food like it was seasoning. Then she slipped back out of the house and just waited outside. I mean, she must have thought this was the moment. Weeks of planning had finally led to this, but this wasn't her first attempt. Nope. Back in December 2008, Lakhvir tried this exact same thing. She snuck into the couple's home, found something edible in the fridge, and laced it with aconite. But she messed up. She didn't use enough poison, so while Lucky and Gurjit did get super sick, they didn't die. Instead, they called an ambulance and ended up in the hospital for weeks. This time, she didn't account for the fact that Gurjit might just not be as hungry as Lucky. So Gurjit survived and later testified against her. She told the police everything, the sickness, the suspicions, and the tension that had been building for months. And with all of that, Lakhvir was instantly the #1 suspect. Lakhvir made it almost too easy for the cops. The moment they questioned her, she panicked and immediately started pointing fingers at her brother-in-law. She was like, "Oh, it wasn't me, it was him." But when they pressed her for details, she fumbled. Like, why would her brother-in-law try to kill Lucky and Gurjit? She had no answers. And on top of that, she left traces of aconite everywhere. The police found the herb in the chicken curry that's still sitting on the dining table, her coat pocket, and even in her home. Along with that, police also uncovered records showing that she'd recently visited India, a country where aconite is commonly found. So forensics tested the traces of poison in her coat and compared them to what was in the chicken curry, and it was an exact match. The trial began in 2010, and honestly, there wasn't much to save her. The jury deliberated for 4 days and came back with a unanimous decision, guilty of murdering Lakhvir Cheema and attempting to murder Gurjit Choongh. She was also convicted for her earlier poisoning attempt, where both survived. Her sentence, life in prison with a minimum of 23 years. The only survivor of this whole ordeal, Gurjit, had spoken out about how this tragedy impacted her. She said, "I feel very tense. My life has stopped. First, you think you're going to get married and start fresh, but this changed everything. I still think about our future, but he's gone. It's hard to process, and I'm constantly upset." During the trial, Gurjit learned so much about Lucky that she didn't know before. Gurjit had even met Lakhvir once at Lucky's house. She tried reasoning with her, like, you have 3 kids and a sick husband in the hospital. Why are you still hung up on Lucky? But Lakhvir wasn't hearing it. In hindsight, Gurjit admits she might have rushed into marrying Lucky too quickly, but still, she remembers him fondly, despite everything. The case sent shockwaves through the UK. People couldn't believe that someone would go to such lengths over unrequited love. It's a tragic reminder of how dangerous obsession can be.
Okay, is your girlfriend conscious?
Yeah,
Is she awake?
yeah, same like me. But we are very worried because
Okay, so what makes you think somebody poisoned your food?
she was my ex-girlfriend. She came to visit me.
You think your ex-girlfriend's done it?
Yeah.
So, what's the takeaway here? For starters, change your locks after any kind of intrusion, like immediately. And while you're at it, report it to the police because, hello? Lucky's decision not to change his locks gave Lakhvir free rein to walk in and carry out her plans, not once, but twice. It's a chilling reminder that small precautions, like updating locks and being mindful of who has access to your space, can make a huge difference in your safety. That's it for today's story. Let me know your thoughts. What would you do if you were in Lucky's shoes? Or better yet, how do you feel about Lakhvir's actions? Let's discuss. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious. I'll see you in the next episode.